so excited seeing people arrive with so vast, exciting enthusiasm. So thank you so much. The first thing I want to do is go ahead and acknowledge that we gather here on the traditional lands of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people past and present. Let's take a moment tonight to honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe, a people who are still here, continuing to bring their heritage of this place to life. Acknowledging that we're on native land is just a start, so if you're able, consider donating directly to realrentduwamish.org to help support Duwamish outreach and cultural life. I have just a little bit of housekeeping to do before we get started. First, go ahead and silence your cell phones. You're totally fine to have them out, but perhaps not vocalizing. There will be time for signing after tonight's talk. You're going to be called up by row to get books signed. And if you enjoyed tonight's event, check out upcoming author visits here at ubookstore.com/events, and make sure you tell friends. Without further ado, the person you are here to see, Alex Aster is a #1 New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Publishers Weekly bestselling author, as well as an internationally bestselling author and one of the most followed novelists on social media. She graduated summa cum laude from the University of Pennsylvania, where she studied creative writing, and is also the author of the critically acclaimed Emblem Island series. You can learn more about the world of LIGHTLARK at asterverse.com, and it's our honor to introduce Alex.
You want me to switch the chair over here? Oh no, it's fine. I probably shouldn't be drinking hot chocolate while I talk anyway. Thank you so much, Milo. Yay! I'm so excited to be here. I've never been to Seattle before, so this is an honor, and thank you all so much for coming. It truly means the world to me. Thank you. So I'm just going to start off by talking a little bit about how NIGHTBANE came to be, if it's okay with you. Just tell you a little bit about how I wrote the book, how that whole process happened, and then I have some questions that you all were kind enough to write right before you walked in here. So then I'll be going over and looking at those questions. But yeah, so I wrote NIGHTBANE right before and right after LIGHTLARK came out. So before then, I had never had writer's block before. Like, I'd heard it, people always ask me like, oh, how do you get out of writer's block? And I honestly didn't really know what that was, because I'm sure there are writers in the audience and you can relate to the fact that sometimes you feel like you just have too many words, like you can't even type them fast enough, you can't speak them fast enough, you just have so much to say and you love writing so much that you just, if anything, I had too many words, right? Not just like a drought. Until NIGHTBANE, then I knew exactly what writer's block was, because I had it pretty badly. For the first time in my life, I had nothing to say. I was just staring at a blank page. I did not know how I was going to get through it. And I think a lot of that was the pressure of writing NIGHTBANE. For most of my life, since I was 12, I was writing these books, and I was writing them for an audience one, me. I was my only reader, and even though I tried to get those books published, it never happened until about 2018 when I got my first book deal. And so I was used to writing for a smaller audience. And then in 2020, my first book for my middle grade series came out, and it was in the middle of the pandemic, and the bookstores had been closed. And so bookstores weren't necessarily buying new books from new voices. So it was a tough time to debut. And it was also for 8 to 12-year-olds, and I don't get to meet a lot of 8 to 12-year-olds, except for my cousins, and they were not reading my books. And 8 to 12-year-olds are not on social media either, so even if I did start to get a few readers, I didn't get to meet them like I get to meet you right now. And so it really felt like I wasn't writing for anyone, and definitely not as big of an audience as LIGHTLARK now has. And so when I wrote LIGHTLARK, that was in 2020, and it was when I had parted ways with my agent. So I did not have an agent again, after so many years of trying to get one, I didn't have an agent. My book was about to come out when most of the bookstores were closed, and I was told that it would be impossible for me to get a young adult book deal, because not only was young adult fantasy so saturated and so hard to break into, but my sales record was not great. Publishers can see how many book sales you have, and my number was not impressive at all. So I was told, you're never going to get this book deal. And I wrote LIGHTLARK anyway, because honestly, I'm sure a lot of people can relate. During that time, we were isolated, we were inside. It was a tough time for everyone. And I needed something like for a balm for my soul, and like I've since I was a little kid written for me first, and so I wrote that book for me. I put everything I love into it. I always was going to try to get it published, but in the back of my head, I always thought like that's probably not going to happen. So I wrote it for me, and there was no pressure at all because again, like I was just my only audience. But then because of all of you and because of so many other people who saw that original video and kept supporting the book did happen and it did get published, and then it went on to find an audience that was truly like beyond what anyone expected, like including my publisher and including me. And so when I was writing NIGHTBANE, that was after the movie deal had happened. It was after like I had 20 different publishers around the world, and it really seems counterintuitive that like I would have so much passion and motivation for writing when literally no one wanted to read my stuff. But then when I did have a lot of people, it was just like a faucet turned off. Like I could not write. And so that was where I was writing NIGHTBANE. And it was really hard. Like I always tried to like, share like the good and the bad. It was a really tough time for my writing. I could not get anything on the page. I did not want to write. And so I do now have tips for writer's block if anyone is going through that. My first tip is, and this is going to be very shocking to everyone I know, surprisingly, being on your phone all the time and being on social media is not great for writing. I know it's like super surprising. And so now I put my phone in a different room when I need to be writing. I think it's really interesting that nowadays we have such like immediate gratification, like instant gratification of social media. Like we post something and we have a comment, we send a text and we get an answer. So we're used to getting like, feeling like happy right away. And writing a book is the opposite of instant gratification. Like you will be writing for years sometimes without even having one person read it, or years before you get a book deal or have any sort of like, get any sort of return on the investment of your time. And so I think it's really hard for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people, to go back and forth between like, it's so easy to grab that phone and do an internet search, like, watch a show, send a text, post on social media, look at social media because you get that instant gratification, and then just sit in front of a blank page and just like see that cursor, like, just flashing at you, and you're like, I know you're supposed to move, I know it, but I don't have any words for you today. And that was just really difficult. So now I put my phone in a different room. I find it to be really helpful. And during the weekends or like times when I'm just gonna be writing all day, I wake up and again, very, very shocking, I don't look at my phone, and surprisingly, it makes me way more productive if I don't start off the day just on my phone. And so I put it like under a pillow or something where I can't see it. I also don't have notifications on my laptop so that I don't go back and forth. I also found it to be really helpful to just start writing scenes that I was really excited by, even if they wouldn't make it in the book, or even if they were like in the middle of the book or towards the end, because I found that just as soon as you start writing, it really just brings more writing and more words. And so that was really helpful to me. So those are my two tips. Writer's block, it was really tough, and if anyone's going through it, like, happy to talk to you. But yeah, so those are my tips, and eventually it did go away. Eventually I fell into the story and I fell in love with the series, and like so many of you, like your messages, your reactions, your videos like truly helped me. I also listened to a lot of playlists, like people made like LIGHTLARK playlists, and I found them and I listened to those while I was reading NIGHTBANE, so thank you to anyone who made a playlist. But yeah, so once that was over with, I truly just like fell into the book. And so most of this year was spent writing NIGHTBANE. And I fell in love with it. I'm really proud of it. I, again, put so much of what I love into this book. And so that's why I'm so excited now that it's out in the world. And just for curiosity's sake, has anyone read it in the audience? Oh, you read it? Oh my gosh, yeah, a little bit. Okay, without spoiling it, like, thoughts, reactions. Oh, you liked it? Oh, thank you. I probably should have like not asked that because you were like awful and like everyone just left. I don't know what I would do, so thank you for saying something good. I'm so glad you liked it. Yeah, something that I really tried to do with this book is there's a love triangle in LIGHTLARK and NIGHTBANE. And I hate love triangles, so I don't know why I put one in there. But I hate love triangles when it's very clear who she's gonna end up with. Like, at least for Twilight, like, everyone knew she was gonna end up with Edward. Like, come on, like, really, you thought she was gonna end up with like the non-vampire. And so I thought like that was very clear. Like the Hunger Games, like I thought that was pretty clear too. And so I really set out to make a love triangle where you did not know who she was gonna end up with. Yeah, okay. So I've heard that reaction, and it's made me so happy because I kept saying that, but I had no proof. Until people would come up to me and they were like, yes, I don't know who to choose. And something else that I kept saying that I had no proof for until 2 days ago at Yale Fest when someone told me is I kept saying that like NIGHTBANE will make you switch teams because people are like very intensely like Team Grim or Team Oro. Yeah, you look nervous. People are very intensely like Team Grim or Team Oro, and I was like, I'm telling you, you will change. You will change. Whoever team you are, I think you're gonna change because you get so much new information in NIGHTBANE. And they're like, no, I won't. And then I met someone who did. I met someone actually who has a cat named Grim. Yeah, a cat named Grim. And they might be switching sides. I don't know what's gonna happen to the cat. I know, right? Like, you're not a cat. No, maybe it'll be like an Oro cat. But yeah. So yeah, I did meet someone who has a Grim cat, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. But yeah, so that's something I set out to do. So when you're reading NIGHTBANE, the few people who have read it already, I'm glad that I'm seeing some nods. Yes. That I know. I hope that it just makes it harder. I hope it just is not an easy choice for you because it's not an easy choice for Isla. So I'm glad that it's going to be a little harder. But that's my whole spiel about how NIGHTBANE came to be. I have these amazing questions that you all asked beforehand, so I'm going to read through them, and then I can't wait to meet each of you and answer your questions as best as I can. But again, thank you so much for being here. It really means the world to me to meet you in person. Like I was talking to Milo beforehand that when you post, like I try to ask people like, how did you even find out about my books? Because really, like I have been like a writer without an audience for so much longer than I've been a writer with, you know, like the accolades, like and I still feel that way. And so I do want to say, like, if you are a writer and if you don't have an agent, you don't have a publisher, like I know what that's like. That was me for like over a decade before like any of this happened. And I do think that it's such a magical place to be because you don't have deadlines. You don't have like the pressure of like this being, you know, a job or like the pressure of a deadline. And so if you're in that place right now, like truly, that is the best time to write. And I think that's the time where you're gonna have your best writing because you don't have any constrictions. Like you can take as long as you need. You can take a break. It's such a great place to be. So truly, like if you're in that place, I know it can feel like hopeless and like, you know, you're getting rejections, but it is also a beautiful place to be because you can just write what you want to and you don't have a time limit or anything like that. So I do want to say that, but again, thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to see your questions and answer them. Okay, so someone asked, what was your favorite scene to write in LIGHTLARK and NIGHTBANE? Okay, for LIGHTLARK, I really liked the scene called Thorns. It's a scene where Isla is, and I'm gonna try not to spoil anything. It's Isla's like she got like thorns, a bunch of thorns like in her back, and like she's like crying, like she's like throwing up, like it's like in front of Oro. It's like not a great scene for her, but I really like it. So I think it's like the turning point in their relationship where like you start to see like a little bit of like tenderness between them and like they don't just like purely hate each other. So I really like that scene in LIGHTLARK. For NIGHTBANE, oh, and I guess I'll give a grim scene too. In LIGHTLARK, I really like the scene in the Abbey, like the Gothic church, I guess, on the island. And I like that scene because of the scene, but also because how LIGHTLARK like came to be is I was writing it in college, but it was very different. Like the story was different. The characters were a little the same, but it was really different. It was actually set in our world, and it was like a magical realism where they go to LIGHTLARK. But when I moved to New York, I moved into an apartment that was right across from an old church, and it was a church like 200 years ago, and then it became a nightclub, and then it was a gym by the time I moved across the street. But some people might recognize the name. It's called Limelight. And like I know like my dad somehow like knew, I think it was like a famous club like in the 80s or something. Like it's like studio like or something, like one of those like types of things. But it's called Limelight. And I loved the LL, so that's how Lightlark happened. It's like I liked Limelight, Lightlark, and that church looks exactly like the one I put in Lightlark. So I put that church is in there. That's my thank you to the church, and I would just sit there and look at the church, and then the ideas would start to come, and that's how Lightlark came to be. So that's my other favorite Lightlark scene. As far as NIGHTBANE, again, I'm going to try not to spoil it. For NIGHTBANE, I really like a scene. I really like a chapter that's called Wildflower because it has one of my favorite quotes that I write in a lot of the books. It's like, I think it's love was a wildflower, it grew best in secret. Like that's a quote, and you have to see who it's talking about. And then another scene I really liked. I'm trying not to spoil it. I guess I really like the ending, and I won't tell you obviously, but I truly like encourage you, just even for yourself, just film your reaction to the last like 10 pages. I see some giggles from like you am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
I want you to see yourself like, and I send it to me. I want to see it too. I was like cackle and be like, yes, that was what I was going for. I've seen some wild reactions, and that is exactly what I was going for. I cried writing that ending. Like I love it. I'm very proud of it. I did it like a plot twist at the end of Lightlark. I love plot twists. Again, I wrote for myself first. Like I put everything I love, and that's like something I think like all writers should do, because at the end of the day, you have to read your own writing so many times that if you don't like it, like, good luck reading it like 100 times. So yeah, I love plot twists. So I put a bunch of them in NIGHTBANE, and I can't wait to see your reaction. So that's my favorite scene in NIGHTBANE. Okay. Oh, favorite quote from each book. So from Lightlark, I like the quote, "There are lies and liars all around you." I put that in books when I sign them, because I think that really like encapsulates Lightlark. Like everyone's lying to you. You don't know who's gonna betray her, or who's lying until like the very end. And for NIGHTBANE, and the one I just said, "Love was a wildflower." I like that one. I also like what became the main quote of the NIGHTBANE book. It's a grim quote, and it's "You once were the bane of my existence, and now you're the center of it." I posted that a lot. So that's the one I like. Oh, I have a little smiley face on this one. Do you have any advice for any aspiring author? Yes, I do. So I have a few things, and I hope that they're practical, because I was also like, as an aspiring author going to these things, and I would always be like, please just tell me something I can use. And so something like truly like that I would want to tell myself 10 years ago would be read Save the Cat Writes a Novel. Save the Cat I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with it. Save the Cat is like a plot structure they use for screenplays. And if you read it, you will see that every successful like Marvel movie, like most movies that make it to theater, have this exact plot structure. It's very loose, so it's cool because it's not like very rigid. Basically, like you have an inciting incident at the beginning, like you have a point of no return, like the hero has to like go somewhere else, do something else. And then you have a midpoint, like a point right in the middle where something drastic happens to keep from like the middle being just boring and like going on too long. And then like towards the end, like 75% of the way through, you have an all is lost moment. That's where like the hero loses. How are they ever gonna recover from this? And then they get back up, and you have the final fight scene. If you read this book, you will see every single movie, regardless of genre, follows this type of plot structure, because it works, right? It's a great way to storytell and to keep from having like a sagging middle or like slow parts in your book. And so they made it for novels. And so I really just think that's like such a secret that like everyone should know, like read that book. It really helps with plot structure. It helps with characters. They talk about character growth, just stuff that like seems intuitive, but as long as you're writing, like you can just like for a very long time, you can be writing and just not really have things connect. So when I read that book, I was like, oh my gosh, of course this should happen, but it just didn't connect for me until I read that. And so I just recommend it, like Save the Cat Writes a Novel. I think it's really helpful for anyone writing. So my second advice would be to just try to be as patient as possible, especially if you're younger. I was so impatient, so I'm a hypocrite. Like I was the least patient person. And it really hurt me in the end. Like I wrote so many books over so many years, And I do think that I did myself a disservice by being in such a rush. And so I would always just like write a book and like try to send it out to agents as soon as it was done. I even sometimes would not do this. I would even sometimes send out a book like before it was done. And so I'd have to like finish the book because like someone requested pages. And of course that never worked out. Like you should never do that. But I was always just so impatient. I just wanted an agent so badly. And I just think that you should take as much time as possible because at the end of the day, I always thought like, oh, I was going to make it easier for myself. I was going to make the process shorter. But at the end, you don't. Like if I had just sat down, read my book, taken the time to have it be read by other people, edit it, like do all that stuff, like that would have been the same time, if not like less time than writing another book and writing another book and writing another book. So eventually I did learn, but I just think that I see like lots of writers be in such a rush, like you have to be published by this age or anything. Like I started writing when I was 12. Like I thought I was going to be like a teenage author, and oh my gosh, I'm going to be writing this book in my bedroom, and no one's going to even know about it. I'm going to be a secret author. Like that did not happen. Like I'm 28 now. Like it took, a while for it to happen. And even with my first book deal, and like I got an agent the day I graduated from college, and then that book deal didn't work out. And I saw a question about agents here, so I'll dive deeper into that. But I just think like don't be in a rush, because at the end of the day, I do think that like you make things harder for yourself instead of like easier. So just like take your time. That's my advice. Okay. How long have you had the idea for the book? So I'd said before that the first version of LIGHTLARK was right before I graduated from college. So I was like 21. And then when I moved to New York right after college, for those few years, I wrote like several different versions of LIGHTLARK. So it would be same characters, same world with different plot, just over and over and over. So I think that was like about 5 years of that before I got the book deal, because I got the LIGHTLARK book deal like 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. So yeah, it was around 5 years before the book like actually got picked up by a publisher. Okay, this is the question. Was finding a literary agent a difficult process? Yes, and I made it harder for myself. It was me too. Yes, it was really tough. And now, like, I'm on my 4th agent, and like, there's just so much advice I could give, like, that now that I have had several agents and I've seen it and I can kind of look at it from like not an emotional perspective and more of like a logical one, it's just honestly, there's so much luck involved. Like these agents, like, unfortunately, it's like you have to kind of send them the right thing at the right time. They have to be in the right mindset. They have to like be wanting this, and like there's so much out of your control that I truly think like you shouldn't write to a trend, because first of all, anything that's being published right now was acquired like 2 years ago, and so just like by the time you will write your trend, it'll be like the next trend. And so I would not ever like write to trend. Like just write what you love. Truly, like write what you want to write. Don't think about the trends. Like anything that is a trend now was not a trend when they were writing it. So yeah, I think that that's important, but there's just so much luck involved of like, again, the agent could just not be looking for clients. Like they could have just acquired a book like that. There's so much out of your control that I think the best advice I can give is just to like write what you want to and just make it the best possible thing. And then just try and try again and try again. But yes, it was a really difficult process. I started trying to get an agent when I was 12. My book was horrible, so like that obviously did not happen. But I will say this, that the first agent I ever queried or sent like a cold email to when I was 12 was the agent who represented Twilight, because I loved the Twilight books. And obviously it was a rejection, and I was devastated. And then everyone else rejected it too, so it was more devastation. But then I wrote another book, and then everyone rejected it, and another one, everyone rejected it, and another one, and another one, and another one, all through middle school, high school, college. And then the day I graduated from college, I got my offers from agents. I had multiple offers. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be able to do more America like tomorrow. Like my book is coming out, it's gonna become a movie, like all the crazy dreams you have. Like I was like, done, like great, perfect timing. Thank you. Like I just graduated from college, perfect. That book did not sell to any publisher. Every publisher rejected it, and then we parted ways, and I didn't have an agent anymore. And so I was like, oh God, that's not how it was supposed to go. And so I again didn't have an agent, and I actually wrote LIGHTLARK during that, like the first completed version of LIGHTLARK. And no one wanted that either. Every single agent rejected it. And then I wrote what became my first published book, Emblem Island. And then I did get an agent offer. And then I continued to write multiple versions of LIGHTLARK until I parted ways with that agent. And then I didn't have an agent again. And then I wrote LIGHTLARK, the version that was published. I got an agent. And then everything happened. We were on submission to publishers, and almost every single publisher had rejected it. And that was the point where I made the video. I was like, I literally have nothing to lose at this point. But I saw the process happening again, and I was just like, I don't want this to happen again. I don't want it to be rejected by every publisher. Like, I believe in this book, and I do believe there's an audience. If I can only just find that audience, and it was so lucky, right? Like, I don't control the algorithm. I don't even know if a video like that would work nowadays, like with how the algorithm has changed. So it was so much luck. And yeah, that's how it happened. So it was really hard to get an agent. But I do think I made it harder for myself by, first of all, not being patient. Like when I was a teenager, like I'm glad that happened. None of those books should be published. But I do think like the best advice I can give to querying authors is like take your time with your manuscript. Please, because if everyone rejects it, you have to write another book. So it's like a lot better to just like make sure that book you're sending out is as amazing as possible. But to close out my story, the original agent I published when I was 12, who rejected me and rejected every single book after that. Now she's my agent. So yeah. And it just really truly goes to show a no is just a no for now. It is not a no forever. So if you're getting a no from any agent, any publisher, it's not forever. Truly, it's just for right now. It's only forever if you stop and if you give up. And so there's no hard feelings about any of that, because at the end of the day, this is a business, and also like I wasn't ready. Like I'm glad that she's my agent now, but I hope that story shows you that even if someone rejects you for every single thing, they could still be your agent one day. Like you just never know what's gonna happen. But just there's so much luck involved. So I do think like just giving yourself as many chances as possible. Like for that video that went viral, I posted a lot of other videos that did not go viral, and so I just got lucky, right? And so at some level, a lot of this and most of things in life is kind of like a lottery, and you just have to keep giving yourself tickets, like try, and one day luck will meet hard work and talent and a million other things. But luck is a huge portion of it. And so I just think like the harder you work, the more opportunities you give yourself, the luckier you get, because you're like, giving yourself more chances. So that is my really long answer for the agent question. And I'm happy to talk more about it if you have specific questions. Okay. Oh, this is a question I spent like a few minutes talking about. How do you overcome writer's block? I think I gave my advice. Okay, and who is your favorite character to write? Probably Grimm. I really like his banter with Isla. I like that he's the villain. I like that in this book, I don't think this is too much of a spoiler, but it really is like a more traditional like enemies to lovers relationship, which I love. So put it in there because I love that. Okay, what's your biggest inspiration when writing LIGHTLARK? I get really inspired. And so I kind of like hesitate telling you that, because I'm like, I also am the person who will take days. I'm working on my book and I'm just making like a Pinterest board. I do think they're important though, and I think it's just important. Like writing is so emotional, and you have to kind of, at least for me, I have to be in the right headspace, and so I need to kind of clear my desk. I need to like sit. I need to have like a hot chocolate or a coffee and like have my Pinterest board. And I think those things are important, but they can become like a crutch. So like just make sure you move past that point too, which is advice I had to give myself when I had writer's block. But yeah, I get really inspired by music and by Pinterest boards. But the weird thing I do for music is I will listen to the same song like on a loop, because it becomes like white noise, but it's like aesthetic white noise. Like you have like the vibe of the book. And so I wrote all of LIGHTLARK to Champagne Problems by Taylor Swift like on a loop. Just the whole loop. And it's like the words, some of the words, but it's not like it really, really relates to LIGHTLARK. I do think the vibe kind of does. But yeah, it was literally on a loop. And so I'm probably like one of the top 1% of listeners of that song because of LIGHTLARK. Okay, what's the book you read that inspired you to become an author? So I remember very clearly the moment where I was a very shy kid. I like didn't have that many friends, and my mom picked me up from school, and I was like very quiet and sad. and she like turns around in the car and she's like, here, I got you this. And it was really smart of her because like at that age, like we can be so mean to our moms. And she just didn't say anything else. Because if she had said like, oh, you want to talk, I would have never read the book, right? Like she just gave it to me and she turned around. She never mentioned it again. And I loved it. And it was the first time where I saw like that reading was not just what you read at school. Because the books at school, like you're like, I don't like to read. Like I don't want to read this. And some people do like to read that, but I was not one of them. And so I really think when a kid doesn't like to read, they just haven't like found the right book for them. And so my mom handed me that and I was like, oh my gosh, this is reading? Like I can read this. It can be like watching a movie or like a TV show. It can be like just for like entertainment. I don't have to like go dissect it in an English class. Like, you know, like, yeah. So that was the first moment where I was like, oh my gosh. And then I was like, I want to write something like this. So Twilight was a big one, but maybe the biggest one was Meg Cabot is like the author of The Princess Diaries. But she has a lot of other books, and she was the author that like I read every single thing that she published. I would go to the bookstore and just go through her name and be like, what else do you have? Like, and just go through everything. I've never met her. If I did one day, I think I would just die. But yeah, she was so. Yeah, I just wanted to be her. And I just thought she was so cool. And so yeah, those two are my big inspirations. Okay, I think this is the last note card. Okay. Has the movie for LIGHTLARK started filming? If no, are you all still casting? Can't wait to read NIGHTBANE. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your question. Okay, so you might have heard that we were on like strike. There were strikes in Hollywood for a very long time. And so right before the strike started, I flew to LA and I met with like new people that are involved with the movie. And it was not new people like replacing, but just additional people being added to like the whole team doing the movie. And it was so exciting. And there was really big news that I'm unfortunately not allowed to share yet. But then the strike started, which was great. Like the strike is a good thing for everyone. And so because of the strike, nothing could happen. And so everything in development in Hollywood was on pause. And then they just ended. So things are going back again. I still cannot share what has happened, but it is not casted yet because with the SAG strike, you couldn't cast for the last 2 months. So it's not been casted yet, but something I will say that I think is really cool is I've talked to producers a lot about casting, and they look at fan casts, and that was something that was really surprising to me. So I'm like, really, you do? And they're like, yeah. And so I send them all of the fan casts you all send. They're probably like, oh my gosh, why is she like busting us again? But I send it all. So if you have any suggestions, send them to me, and I promise I will send them. And they do look, and they do care, which is smart, right? Like they care what the readers think. I think that's super smart. And they, in particular, are very, very aware that you all have made LIGHTLARK what it is, and so they care, which I think is so cool, and that's why I went with them. So yeah, hopefully I have more to share soon. But if I share any more, I think someone will come down from the ceiling from Universal and just like, I don't know, get me in trouble. So I can't say anything else, but thank you all so much for coming. I hope this was enjoyable, and I can't wait to meet each and every one of you. We have some surprises. I don't know if you have them yet. Oh, I see the bookmark. Aren't they so cool? Yeah. I didn't see them until a few days ago, like at the event for the first time. So yeah, I hope you like everything. I can't wait to meet you and sign your books and talk to you. But thanks so much for coming. Good. Okay. Thank you. We're a sweater.